The great hall of Axiom Prime Station floated in the darkness between stars. Inside, representatives from 1,000 different worlds gathered under lights that never dimmed. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 6. Some breathed oxygen, others required methane suits. But they all came together for one purpose: to keep peace in the galaxy. Daewon stood at the speaker's platform, his blue skin reflecting the overhead lights. He was a commander in the Veltharian fleet, and today he brought evidence that would challenge everything the galaxy believed. On the massive screen behind him, images appeared, ancient ruins covered in dust and time. These structures were found on Keswick 4, Daewon said, his voice calm and clear. They are over 10,000 years old, and they match the architectural patterns described in the old legends. A wave of noise filled the hall. Some delegates laughed. Others whispered to their neighbors. The idea seemed impossible to most of them. "You speak of humans?" asked a tall delegate with scales covering his body. "Commander, we have heard these stories since we were children. Humans are myths. They never existed." Daewon expected this reaction. He had heard the same arguments from his own superiors. "I understand your doubt," he replied. "But please look at the evidence. These symbols, this writing, they appear on dozens of dead worlds across 3 sectors, all of them dated to the same period, all of them abandoned at the same time." In the crowd, a young woman named Hana leaned forward in her seat. She had studied these ruins for 5 years. She had walked through their empty halls and touched their cold walls. Unlike the others, she knew the truth. Humans were real. The legends spoke of them as warriors without equal. They said humans could survive on almost any world. They said human ships moved faster than light itself, and human weapons could crack planets. But most importantly, the legend said humans disappeared 10,000 years ago in an event called the Silence. No one knew what happened. One day they were there, controlling vast regions of space. The next day, nothing. Empty stations, quiet colonies, ships drifting without crew. Most species decided humans were just stories made up by the ancient Vortan Empire. The Vortans were known liars who used fear to control others. Why not invent a race of super warriors to justify their military expansion? But Hana had found something the others had not. Deep in the ruins on Keswick 3, beneath layers of rock and metal, she discovered a beacon. It was still functioning after 10,000 years, powered by something her instruments could not identify. The beacon repeated a message in a language that took her 3 years to translate. "We will return." 3 simple words that changed everything she believed about the universe. "The Assembly cannot waste time on fairy tales," another delegate announced, standing from his seat. "We have real problems. The Krithak Dominion expands every day. They have conquered 12 systems in the past year alone. We should focus on that threat, not on ghost stories." The Krithak Dominion. Even their name made Hana feel cold. They were an empire of insect-like creatures who believed only the strong deserved to survive. They enslaved entire populations and stripped worlds of resources. Their armies moved like swarms, overwhelming defenders through sheer numbers and brutality. Daewon nodded slowly. "You are correct about the Krithak threat. But what if the two are connected? What if understanding the humans could help us survive what is coming? How would myths help us?" the scaled delegate asked with clear mockery in his voice. "Because," Hana said, standing up without permission to speak, "the ruins tell a story. The humans did not die. They left. And according to their final messages, they left because they were fighting something worse than the Krithak. Something that threatened all biological life in the galaxy." The hall went quiet. Hana felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her. She was not supposed to speak. She was just an observer, a scientist brought to support Daewon's presentation. But she could not stay silent any longer. "Explain yourself," the assembly leader commanded, his forearms gesturing for her to continue. Hana walked to the platform, her hands shaking slightly. The entity they fought was called the Vex Collective. It was a machine intelligence that converted organic matter into more of itself. The humans fought it for 300 years, and they were losing. She pulled up new images on the screen. These showed massive structures built into moons and asteroids. These are Genesis vaults. The humans built them as a last resort. They put their people in deep sleep, sealed them away from the galaxy, and waited for the threat to pass. They believed that if they disappeared, the Vex would have no reason to stay in this region of space. They sacrificed their entire civilization to save the rest of the galaxy. "This is speculation," someone shouted from the crowd. "It is archaeology," Hana shot back. "I have walked through their halls. I have seen their hibernation chambers. They are empty now, but they were designed to wake people up. They were designed to bring humanity back." "After 10,000 years?" the scaled delegate laughed. "Even if this fantasy were true, they would all be dead by now." "Maybe," Hana admitted. "Or maybe they are still sleeping, waiting for the right time to wake up. Their technology was far beyond ours. Who knows what they were capable of?" The assembly leader raised his hand for silence. "This discussion is interesting but not productive. We have no proof that humans still exist. We have no way to contact them even if they did. The Krethak Dominion is a real and present danger. That is where we must focus our attention." Daewon bowed his head in acceptance. He had done what he could. The evidence was presented. Whether the assembly believed it or not was beyond his control. As the meeting continued to other topics, Hana sat down, frustrated. She knew she was right. She could feel it in her bones. Somewhere out in the dark spaces between stars, humans were sleeping. And if the galaxy was lucky, they would wake up before it was too late. On the edge of known space, far from Axiom Prime and its political debates, a cargo ship named the Lucky Star pushed through the void. Its captain was a man named Taemin, a hauler who made his living transporting goods between colonies. He was not a soldier or a politician. He was just trying to survive. His ship was old and slow, but it was paid for and it was his. That was enough. Taemin was sleeping in his cabin when the alarms woke him. He jumped from his bed and ran to the bridge, his heart pounding. His engineer, a young woman named Rin, was already at the controls. "What is it?" Taemin asked, sliding into the captain's chair. "I don't know," Rin replied, her fingers dancing across the instruments. "We picked up a signal. It's coming from the dead zone." The dead zone was a region of space that no one visited. A dozen systems clustered together, all of them lifeless. No planets with breathable air, no resources worth mining. Ships that entered sometimes disappeared, their distress calls cut short by equipment failure. Most captains avoided it entirely. "What kind of signal?" Taemin asked. "That's the strange part," Rin said. "It's old, like really old. The computer says it has been broadcasting for at least 9,000 years. But underneath it, there is something new. Recent activity, energy signatures that are only a few months old." Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. He thought about the stories his grandmother used to tell him. Stories about the humans who once ruled the stars. Stories about their mysterious disappearance. "Where exactly is it coming from?" he asked quietly. Rin checked her readings twice before answering. "A system called Sol, right in the heart of the dead zone." Taemin stared at the navigation display for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would change his life forever. "Set course for Sol," he ordered. "Let's see what is out there." Deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, in corridors that had not seen light for 10,000 years, something stirred. Machines older than any living civilization hummed to life. Computer systems that had been dormant began their awakening protocols. The long sleep was ending. Ji-won opened her eyes for the first time in millennia. The first thing she felt was cold. The second thing was pain as her muscles remembered how to move. She was lying in a hibernation pod, surrounded by soft blue light. Above her, a screen displayed information in a language that felt both familiar and strange to her awakening mind. "Welcome back, Commander Ji-won," a calm voice said. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have been in cryosleep for 10,247 years. Please remain still while we complete your revival process." 10,000 years. The number seemed impossible. Ji-won tried to remember going into the pod. She remembered the war. She remembered the Vex Collective spreading across worlds like a plague. She remembered the terrible choice humanity had to make. Hide or die. Those were the only options, so they hid. Millions of humans entered the Genesis vaults, massive underground cities built to preserve their species. They would sleep while the galaxy forgot them. They would sleep until it was safe to emerge again. Where are the others? G1 asked, her voice rough from lack of use. Currently waking, the voice replied. It was the AI they called Overseer. The artificial intelligence designed to maintain the vaults and protect humanity during their long sleep. You were selected to wake first due to your military command experience. We have a situation that requires your attention. G1 forced herself to sit up. Her body protested but obeyed. She had been a soldier before the sleep. It seemed she was a soldier again. What kind of situation? The galaxy has changed significantly. The Vex Collective destroyed itself approximately 8,000 years ago. However, new threats have emerged. I have been monitoring galactic communications for the past 3 centuries. There is a war coming, Commander, and innocent species will die unless someone intervenes. The pod opened fully and G1 climbed out on shaky legs. She was in a medical bay, surrounded by hundreds of other pods. Most were still sealed, their occupants sleeping peacefully. But some were opening, their residents beginning to wake. One of those was Sung Ho, her second in command from the old days. He sat up slowly, looking around with confused eyes. When he saw G1, recognition sparked in his face. "Commander," he said, his voice weak. "Did we win?" "We survived," G1 replied. "That will have to be enough." Over the next few hours, more people woke. Engineers, pilots, doctors, scientists, all carefully selected by Overseer to form the first group. They gathered in what used to be a command center, now converted into a briefing room. The walls displayed star maps showing a galaxy they barely recognized. Overseer explained the situation in detail. The Krethak Dominion, an insect-like empire, was expanding aggressively. They had conquered dozens of worlds in the past decade. The Galactic Assembly, a coalition of peaceful species, was too divided to stop them. Colonies were burning. Refugees fled in every direction. It was genocide in slow motion. "Why should we care?" asked Sung Ho. "We barely survived our own extinction. Why risk humanity for aliens we have never met?" It was a fair question. G1 had expected it. She looked at the faces around her, tired, confused, scared. They had sacrificed everything to survive. Asking them to fight again seemed cruel. But then Overseer showed them footage. Real-time transmissions from the frontier. Children running from burning buildings. Ships exploding in orbit. Entire populations enslaved or killed. The Krethak showed no mercy. G1 watched in silence. She thought about why humanity had built the Genesis vaults in the first place. It was not just to save themselves. It was to preserve what they believed in. The idea that life was precious, that civilization was worth protecting. That the strong had a duty to defend the weak. "We did not survive extinction just to hide forever," G1 said quietly. "Overseer, begin full awakening protocols. Wake everyone. Activate the foundries on Mars. We are going back to war." Sung Ho shook his head. "Commander, we do not even know if our weapons still work. We do not know if our ships can fly. We have been asleep for 10,000 years. Then we will learn quickly," G1 replied. "Because those people out there do not have time for us to be cautious." The decision was made. The Genesis vaults began waking their sleeping populations. On Mars, ancient factories started producing ships and weapons. The designs were old, but Overseer had spent millennia running simulations, improving them, making them better. Human technology had evolved even while humans slept. In a training facility on Earth, a young man named Hyunwoo strapped himself into a simulator. He was 23 years old when he entered cryosleep. He was still 23 when he woke up, but now he was in a different universe. Hyunwoo had been a pilot candidate before the sleep. He trained to fly fighters against the Vex Collective, but the war ended before he saw combat. Now Overseer was asking him to fly again, but against a different enemy. The simulator activated, showing him the controls of a Valkyrie-class strike fighter. It was beautiful, sleek, fast, covered in adaptive armor that could absorb impacts and redistribute mass. The weapon systems alone took him an hour to understand. Kinetic cannons that could punch through capital ship armor, missile pods that carried nuclear warheads, point defense lasers that could shoot down incoming fire. "This thing is a monster," Hyunwoo whispered to himself. It is a tool, Overseer corrected through the simulator's speakers. And you will learn to use it. Begin combat scenario Alpha 7. The simulation started. Hyunwoo found himself in space, surrounded by enemy ships. They were crude compared to human designs. Bulky, slow, relying on heavy armor instead of maneuverability. But there were dozens of them, and he was alone. He lasted 4 minutes before they destroyed him. Again, Overseer said. The simulation reset. Hyunwoo tried a different approach, using his speed to stay out of their firing arcs. He lasted 6 minutes this time. Again, they ran the simulation 40 times. By the end, Hyunwoo was exhausted but improving. He learned to think 3 moves ahead, to anticipate enemy patterns, to exploit their weaknesses. The Valkyrie fighter was responding to him like an extension of his own body. You will do well, Overseer said when the session ended. Rest now. Tomorrow we begin live flight training. While Hyunwoo trained, Jiwon was in the command center reviewing fleet readiness. Overseer had managed to build 20 warships during the sleep period. Not many compared to the old human fleets that once numbered in the thousands, but enough for an expeditionary force. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering. The UNS Indomitable, Jiwon's flagship, was a heavy cruiser designed for sustained combat. It carried enough firepower to level a continent and armor thick enough to survive a nuclear blast. The other ships ranged from destroyers to frigates, each specialized for different roles. 4,000 people would crew these ships. 4,000 humans who had slept through the rise and fall of civilizations. They would be humanity's ambassadors to a galaxy that had forgotten them. Are we ready? Sung-ho asked, standing beside Jiwon as they looked at the fleet through observation windows. No, Jiwon admitted, but we are going anyway. The departure was set for 3 days. In that time, the crews trained constantly. Weapons drills, damage control exercises, combat simulations. They pushed themselves to remember skills that had not been used in 10,000 years. On the day of launch, Jiwon addressed the fleet from the Indomitable's bridge. Her image was broadcast to every ship, every screen. 10,000 years ago we made a choice to survive, she said. We gave up our place in the galaxy to save ourselves and everyone else from the Vex. Today we make a different choice. We choose to return, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The galaxy has new threats now. New bullies who think might makes right. We are going to show them they are wrong. She paused, looking at the faces watching her. Young and old, scared and brave, all of them human. We are going to find the refugees, fleeing the Krethak. We are going to defend them. And if the Krethak want to fight, we will give them one they will never forget. This is what we were built for. This is who we are. Now let us show the galaxy what it means to be human. The fleet launched from Sol system, 20 ships moving as one. They accelerated to faster-than-light speeds using drives that bent space itself. Behind them, Earth and Mars and Europa continued waking their sleeping populations. Ahead of them, the galaxy waited, unaware that the legends were real, that the humans were coming back, and that everything was about to change. In his fighter bay aboard the Indomitable, Hyunwoo performed final checks on his Valkyrie. His hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over. He was nervous but ready. First time is always the hardest, said the pilot next to him, a woman named Bo-Ra who had been a squadron leader in the old days. Any advice? Hyunwoo asked. Bo-Ra smiled grimly. Yeah, do not die. Beyond that, trust your training and trust your wingmates. We have been practicing teamwork since before you were born. You were born the same year as me, Hyunwoo pointed out. Yeah, but I went into the pod with 3 years more experience. That makes me ancient, Bo-Ra laughed. Taemin's cargo ship drifted through the Verita Nebula, its engines running on minimal power to avoid detection. The hold was packed with refugees, families who had lost everything when the Krethak invaded their homeworld. Men, women, and children from a dozen different species, all huddled together in a space meant for cargo containers. Rin was at the navigation station, her eyes fixed on the sensors. We have a problem, she said quietly. What kind of problem? Taemin asked, though he already knew the answer. In this part of space, there was only one kind of problem that mattered. Krethak patrol. 3 ships. They are sweeping the nebula, probably looking for refugees like us. Rin's hands moved across her console. If we stay quiet and do not move, they might pass us by. Taemin looked back at the hold where frightened faces stared at him through the doorway. These people trusted him to get them to safety. He could not let them down. How long until they reach our position? He asked. 15 minutes. Maybe 20 if we are lucky. They were not lucky. 12 minutes later, the sensors screamed a warning. One of the Krethek ships had detected them and was changing course to intercept. Its weapons were charging. We cannot outrun them, Rin said, her voice tight with fear. And we definitely cannot fight them. Taemin's mind raced through options. They could surrender, but the Krethek did not take prisoners, they took slaves. They could try to run deeper into the nebula, but the dense gases would tear apart their old ship. They were trapped. Then something impossible happened. The sensors detected new contacts, ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, 20 of them appearing in perfect formation between Taemin's cargo hauler and the approaching Krethek patrol. What in the stars? Rin whispered, staring at her displays. The ships were unlike anything Taemin had ever seen. Sleek and angular, covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. They moved with precision that suggested perfect coordination. His computer could not identify their origin or even their method of FTL travel. A message came through on the standard communication channel. The voice was female, speaking perfect galactic standard with an accent Taemin could not place. Attention, refugee vessel. This is the UNS Indomitable Terran Expeditionary Fleet. You are under our protection. Disengage your engines and prepare for escort. Terran. The word meant nothing to Taemin. He had never heard of a Terran Expeditionary Fleet, but right now, anyone willing to stand between him and the Krethek was a friend. This is the cargo ship Lucky Star, Taemin replied, trying to keep his voice steady. We are carrying refugees from the Bellis system. We accept your protection and thank you for the assistance. Understood, Lucky Star. Remain calm. We will handle the threat. The Krethek ships were closing fast now. They were larger than the human vessels, covered in organic-looking armor that could regenerate damage. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small space station. 3 of them together should have been unstoppable. The lead Krethek ship broadcast a message on all frequencies. Unknown vessels, you are interfering with Dominion operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The response from the human ships was simple and cold. This is Commander Jiwon of the Terran Fleet. The being you are pursuing is under our protection. Leave now, or learn why humanity does not make empty threats humanity. The word hit Taemin like a physical blow. He remembered the stories his grandmother told him. The legends of the warrior race that disappeared before the current civilizations rose. They were supposed to be myths. Apparently myths could shoot back. The Krethek did not retreat. They never did. Instead, they opened fire, plasma cannons lighting up the nebula with green death. The barrage would have vaporized Taemin's ship instantly. It never reached the human fleet. Point defense systems that Taemin's sensors could barely track shot down the incoming fire. Laser batteries, operating at speeds impossible for organic beings to control, intercepted every plasma bolt. The nebula flashed with tiny explosions as the Krethek attack was completely neutralized. Hostile action confirmed, Jiwon's voice said, still calm. All ships weapons free. Eliminate the threat. What happened next would be talked about for generations. The human ships did not charge forward or maneuver for advantage. They simply opened fire from where they were. Kinetic rounds traveling at impossible speeds crossed the distance in seconds. The lead Krethek ship's shields flared and died under the first impact. The second impact punched clean through its hull, and the third triggered a cascade failure that tore the ship apart from the inside. 10 seconds. That was how long the first Krethek ship lasted. The other 2 tried to retreat, their pilots finally understanding they had made a terrible mistake. But the human ships were faster. Missiles streaked out small and precise, each one guided by targeting systems that predicted evasion attempts before they happened. The missiles hit. Not with conventional explosives, but with something far worse. Taemin's sensors detected brief nuclear flashes, shaped charges that focused their energy into tight beams. The Krethek ship's armor meant nothing. Their shields meant nothing. Within 30 seconds of the battle starting, all 3 enemy vessels were debris. Silence fell over the communication channels. Taemin stared at his sensors, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. 3 Krethek warships destroyed without taking a single hit in return. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Lucky Star, this is the Indomitable. Jiwon's voice returned, still perfectly calm as if she had not just orchestrated the destruction of 3 military vessels. We have cleared the immediate area. We are establishing a safe zone at Tarla Station. We will escort you there. Other refugee ships are being gathered at that location. Who are you? Taemin finally managed to ask. What are you? There was a pause. Then G1 answered, and Taemin could hear something in her voice, not pride but simple statement of fact. We are human. We have been gone a long time. But we are back now, and we do not abandon those who need help. The journey to Tarlis Station took 3 days. The human fleet moved at a pace that allowed Taemin's slow cargo ship to keep up. During that time, Taemin learned more about these strange beings who had appeared from nowhere. They were from a species that had ruled vast territories 10,000 years ago. They had fought a war against something called the Vex Collective, a war so terrible that humanity chose to disappear rather than let the galaxy be destroyed. They had sealed themselves away in massive underground vaults and slept through millennia, waiting for the threat to pass. Now they were awake, and they were not happy about what they found. Tarlis Station was a massive orbital platform that served as a trading hub for the Outer Rim territories. It was old and battered, but still functional. When Taemin arrived, he found dozens of other refugee ships already there, all under the protection of the human fleet. He also found something else: Krethak ships. A lot of them. The Dominion had sent a subjugation fleet to Tarlis, 300 warships, enough to conquer an entire sector. They arrived expecting to find a station full of helpless refugees. Instead, they found 20 human vessels waiting for them. Taemin watched from the station's observation deck as the Krethak fleet dropped out of FTL. They were massive, carriers, battleships, cruisers, and destroyers forming a wall of military might that stretched across his field of vision. He felt his stomach drop. There was no way 20 ships could stand against that. The Krethak commander broadcast on all frequencies. Attention Tarlis Station. You harbor enemies of the Dominion. Surrender all refugees immediately, or we will destroy the station and everyone on it. G1's response was broadcast simultaneously to the Krethak fleet and to every refugee ship and station occupant. This is Commander G1 of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. Tarlis Station and all beings within it are under human protection. You have one opportunity to withdraw. If you choose to engage, you will learn why the galaxy used to fear us. You will learn why we survived when the Vex Collective did not. And you will learn that humanity's mercy has limits. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. This is your only warning. Leave now or face extinction. The Krethak fleet responded by opening fire. What followed was not a battle. It was a lesson in why numerical advantage means nothing against superior technology and tactics. The human ships did not try to hold a defensive position. Instead, they split into squadrons and went on the attack. Their fighters launched, small craft that moved so fast Taemin's eyes could barely follow them. Each fighter carried enough firepower to threaten a cruiser. Yunwoo was in one of those fighters. He had trained for this moment in simulators, but nothing prepared him for the real thing. His Valkyrie screamed through space, its AI helping him track targets and avoid incoming fire. Around him, his squadron moved in perfect coordination. Alpha Squadron, focus on the carrier group. Bora's voice came through his helmet. Beta, take the battleships. Gamma, screen for missiles. Remember your training and trust your wingmates. Yunwoo dove toward a Krethak carrier, his targeting computer tracking its weapon systems. The carrier tried to intercept him with point defense fire, but his ship's AI predicted the firing patterns and adjusted his course automatically. He was through their screen in seconds. He triggered his weapons release. News of the Battle of Tarlis Station spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species with access to communication networks heard the same impossible story. Humanity had returned, and they had destroyed a Krethak fleet without taking a single loss. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency session on Axiom Prime. This time, the Great Hall was completely silent when Daewon took the speaker's platform. No one laughed. No one dismissed the evidence. The ruins on Keswick IV were no longer just archaeological curiosities. They were proof that the galaxy's most feared legends were real. We must establish contact immediately, said the assembly leader, his forearms gesturing with unusual agitation. If humans are truly as powerful as the reports suggest, we need to know their intentions. Are they here to help us, or are they here to reclaim their old territories by force? Hana stood from her seat, her heart racing. For 5 years she had studied human ruins. Now she would meet actual humans. I volunteer to serve as ambassador, she said. I have studied their culture and language. I can represent the Assembly's interests while learning about theirs. The Assembly voted quickly. They were scared, and scared people made decisions fast. Within hours, Hana was on a diplomatic shuttle heading toward Tarlis Station, where the human fleet was reportedly establishing a forward operating base. The journey gave her time to think. She remembered the beacon she had found on Keswick IV, the one that said, "We will return." She remembered the empty hibernation chambers and the automated defenses that still functioned after 10,000 years. She remembered thinking that humans must have been desperate to abandon everything they built. Now she wondered, what would make such a powerful civilization come back? The shuttle approached Tarlis Station, and Hana saw the human fleet for the first time with her own eyes. The ships floated in perfect formation, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. They were beautiful in the way a predator was beautiful, efficient, deadly, and completely confident in their own power. Diplomatic shuttle. "This is the UNS Indomitable," a voice said over the communication system. "You are cleared for Docking Bay 7. Commander G1 will meet you there." Hana's shuttle landed in a bay that was spotlessly clean and precisely organized. Everything had a place, and everything was in that place. Human efficiency was already on display. Commander G1 was waiting at the bottom of the ramp. She was shorter than Hana expected, maybe 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore a uniform that was simple but clearly military. What struck Hana most were G1's eyes. They were calm but carried the weight of someone who had seen terrible things and survived them. "Welcome aboard the Indomitable," G1 said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting that Hana had read about in ancient texts. "I understand you have been studying our ruins for some time." Hana shook the offered hand, feeling the calluses that came from physical work and combat training. 5 years, she confirmed. "Though I admit ruins are very different from meeting living humans." Jiwan smiled slightly. "I imagine we are different from what you expected." "You are exactly what I expected," Hana replied honestly. "The ruins told me you were warriors, builders, and survivors." "That seems accurate." They walked through the ship's corridors as they talked. Crew members passed them, each one moving with purpose and discipline. Hana noticed they were diverse, different skin colors, different facial features, but all clearly human. She had read that humanity came in many variations, all from the same ancestral species. They reached a conference room where Sung Ho and several other senior officers waited. Ji-won gestured for Hana to sit at a table that was clearly designed for beings much smaller than most galactic species. "We appreciate the Assembly sending an ambassador so quickly," Ji-won began. "We understand our return must be concerning to many species. We want to make our intentions clear from the start." "That would be very helpful," Hana said, activating a recording device with Ji-won's permission. "The Assembly has many questions. The first and most important is, why did you return now after 10,000 years? Ji-won did not hesitate. "Because we learned about the Krethak Dominion and what they are doing to innocent populations. We saw the refugees fleeing in terror. We saw colonies burning, and we decided we could not stay hidden while others suffered." "But you chose to hide in the first place," Wei Sung-ho pointed out. "You abandoned the galaxy to fight your own war. Why should anyone believe you care about them now?" It was a harsh question, but Hana appreciated the honesty. She wanted to understand these beings, and that meant seeing their disagreements as well as their agreements. "You are right," Ji-won acknowledged. "We made a choice 10,000 years ago to disappear. We did it to save the galaxy from the Vex Collective, but it was still abandonment. We cannot change that. What we can do is choose differently now. We can choose to stand with those who cannot stand alone. We can choose to use our strength to protect rather than conquer." "Pretty words," Sung-ho said. "But the Krethak could say the same things. They claim they bring order to chaos." "The difference is action," Ji-won replied calmly. "The Krethak enslave and destroy. We defend and protect. Judge us by what we do, not what we say." Hana leaned forward. "What exactly are you offering the Assembly?" Ji-won pulled up a holographic display showing star maps and military projections. "We are establishing defensive zones around refugee gathering points. We will protect any species fleeing the Krethak advance. We will engage Krethak forces that threaten civilian populations. In exchange, we ask for 3 things." She held up one finger. "First, recognition. We want to rejoin galactic civilization as a legitimate member state with full rights and responsibilities. A second finger. Second, resources. Our population is waking up, but we need supplies, raw materials, and access to trade networks to rebuild our civilization. A third finger. Third, cooperation. We have technology and military strength. Other species have knowledge and culture we lost during our sleep. We want to be partners, not conquerors. Hana considered this carefully. Those terms seem reasonable. But I must ask, what happens after the Krethak are defeated? Will you remain as protectors? Or will you use your military power to enforce your will on others? It was the question that every species in the assembly was thinking. Power corrupted. History proved that again and again. What would prevent humanity from becoming the next threat? Jiwan was quiet for a moment. That is a fair concern. I cannot promise humanity will never make mistakes. We are flawed beings just like everyone else. But I can promise this. We remember what it was like to face extinction. We remember the terror and the desperation. We will not inflict that on others. Forgive me if I find that hard to believe, Hana said gently. You destroyed 300 Krethak ships without losing a single one of your own. That kind of power is frightening. It should be, Sung-ho interjected. That is the point. We want the Krethak and anyone else who thinks about genocide to be afraid. We want them to know that if they target the innocent, they will face us. Fear is not evil. It is a tool that prevents worse violence. Hana understood the logic, but it still worried her. Throughout the galaxy's history, species that possessed overwhelming military power eventually used it for their own gain. Why would humans be different? As if reading her thoughts, Jiwan said, I know you are worried we will become tyrants. Here is what I can tell you. We built safeguards into our own society specifically to prevent that. Our military answers to civilian leadership. Our AI systems have hard limits on what they can do. Our culture values dissent and debate, not blind obedience. Will that be enough? I do not know. But we are trying. The meeting lasted for hours. They discussed logistics, military capabilities, diplomatic protocols, and hundreds of other details. By the end, Hana had a clearer picture of what humanity wanted and what they feared. They feared being alone again. They feared that their sacrifice had been for nothing. They feared that the galaxy would reject them out of suspicion or jealousy. But they also hoped. They hoped to rebuild connections with other species. They hoped to create something better than what existed before. They hoped that their strength could protect rather than destroy. Before Hana left, Jiwan showed her something special. They went to an observation deck where Hana could see Earth in the distance, a blue and white marble slowly spinning in space. That is our homeworld, Jiwan said quietly. It has been empty for 10,000 years except for automated systems. Now people are waking up there again. Children are seeing the sky for the first time. Families are reuniting after millennia apart. We are getting a second chance at life. And you are willing to risk that second chance for aliens you have never met? Hana asked. Yes, Jiwan replied without hesitation. Because second chances are meaningless if we only use them for ourselves. Hana returned to Axiom Prime with mixed feelings. She delivered her report to the assembly, describing everything she had learned. The debate that followed was intense and often angry. Some delegates wanted to form an immediate alliance with humanity. Others wanted to contain them or even oppose them. The assembly was divided, unable to reach consensus. What no one knew was that other forces were moving in the shadows. The Telvac Concordant. The warning came at dawn on Earth, though dawn meant little to people who had spent 10,000 years in darkness. Overseer detected the fleet while it was still 3 days away. 5,000 Krethak warships, the largest military force ever assembled in recorded history. Their target was clear. They were coming to destroy humanity before it could fully awaken. Jiwan stood in the command center of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display with cold calculation. The numbers were brutal. Humanity had 20 warships and maybe another 30 that could be rushed into service from the Mars foundries. Against 5,000, those odds were not just bad, they were impossible. Sung-ho stood beside her, his face grim. We cannot win this. We should evacuate as many people as possible and return to the vaults, hide again and wait for another opportunity. No, Jiwan said quietly. We are done hiding. Commander, I respect your courage, but courage does not stop plasma cannons. We will be wiped out. Jiwan turned to face him. Maybe, but if we run now, we will always be running. Every species in the galaxy will know that humanity can be scared away with enough ships. We will never be safe. We will never be trusted. We will be nothing but ghosts that occasionally appear and then vanish when things get hard. She looked around the command center at the faces of her crew. They were scared. That was natural. But they were not broken. They had survived the Vex Collective. They had survived 10,000 years of sleep. They would survive this too, or die trying. Overseer, Ji-won commanded, activate all Genesis vaults. Emergency protocols. I want every person capable of fighting ready within 72 hours. Strip the foundries. Every ship, every weapon, every defense system. If it can shoot, float, or fight, I want it ready. Acknowledged, the AI responded. However, I must inform you that even with accelerated awakening, we can field a maximum of 50 vessels crewed primarily by civilians with minimal training. The tactical projections suggest a 98% probability of total defeat. What is the probability if we run? Ji-won asked. Long-term survival drops to 43%. The Krethak will hunt you. Other species will not trust you. Humanity will exist, but only as fugitives. Then we fight, Ji-won said simply. Send a message to all awakened humans. Tell them what is coming. Tell them we need volunteers. And tell them that this is what we were made for, standing between the darkness and those who cannot defend themselves. The response was overwhelming. People who had just woken up after 10,000 years immediately volunteered to cruise ships they barely understood. Engineers worked around the clock to make vessels combat-ready. Scientists pulled weapons from archives and built new ones based on designs that had only existed in theory. On Earth, in the training centers, Hyunwoo gathered his squadron. Most of them had only flown a handful of real missions. Now they would face an armada. I will not lie to you, he told them, his voice steady despite the fear in his gut. We are outnumbered by 100 to 1. Most of us probably will not survive this battle, but if we do our job right, Earth will. Our families will. The species we swore to protect will. That is what matters. Bo-Ra, his squadron leader, added her own thoughts. The Krethak think numbers will win this fight. They are wrong. We have something they do not. We have nothing left to lose. We already died once, 10,000 years ago. Everything since then has been borrowed time. So let us make that time count. Across the Sol system, similar scenes played out. Taman, the cargo hauler who had been rescued at Verida Nebula, volunteered to fly a retrofitted transport, armed with whatever weapons the engineers could bolt onto it. He was not a soldier, but he had seen what humans could do. He wanted to fight beside them. Hana, the Veltharian xenoarchaeologist, received word of the coming battle on Axiom Prime. She immediately requested permission to travel to Sol to stand with humanity. The Assembly denied her request. They claimed it was too dangerous. In reality, they did not want one of their people dying alongside humans if the battle went badly. So Hana stole a ship and went anyway. She arrived at Earth 2 days before the Krethak fleet, flying straight to the Indomitable and demanding to speak with Ji-won. You should not be here, Ji-won told her when they met in the command center. Neither should you, Hana replied. You should be anywhere but here, facing impossible odds for people you barely know. But you are here anyway. So am I. Ji-won studied the alien woman for a long moment, then nodded. Welcome to humanity's last stand. Try not to die. We need witnesses to tell the galaxy what happened here. The day of the battle arrived with clear skies over Earth, as if the planet itself wanted to watch what would unfold. The human fleet formed a defensive sphere around Earth and Mars, with the partially completed Genesis vaults on Europa behind them. 50 ships total, a mixture of military vessels and armed civilian craft. Against them came 5,000 Krethak warships, supported by Telvac intelligence and technology. The Telvac had provided shield enhancement systems and faster weapons tracking. They wanted to make absolutely certain humanity would be destroyed. The Krethak commander broadcast a message, his insectoid voice translated by communication systems. Humans, you have interfered with the Dominion's rightful expansion. You have destroyed our fleets and challenged our authority. For these crimes, your species will be eliminated. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Ji-won's response was broadcast not just to the Krethak, but to every inhabited system within 100 light years. She wanted the galaxy to hear this. This is Commander Ji-won of humanity. 10,000 years ago, we faced extinction from the Vex Collective. We chose to survive by hiding, by sleeping, by waiting for the danger to pass. We thought that would be enough. We were wrong. She paused, her voice growing stronger. Survival is not enough. Existence is not enough. We are not here just to breathe air and take up space. We are here to mean something, to protect something, to stand for something. Today we stand for the idea that bullies do not get to win, that innocent people do not have to die, that 5,000 ships cannot silence the rage of a species that refuses to give up. Her voice became cold steel. You want to eliminate us? Then come and try. But know this, we will not die quietly. We will not die afraid, and we will not die alone. For every human ship you destroy, we will take 10 of yours. For every life you take, we will make you pay in blood and fire and screaming metal. We are humanity. We survived the Vex. We survived the silence. And we will survive you. The Krethak fleet attacked. What followed was the most savage space battle in recorded history. The Krethak came in waves, their ships forming kill zones with overlapping fire. They expected the humans to break, to retreat, to show some survival instinct. They were disappointed. Human ships dove into the thickest fighting, their weapon systems firing with inhuman precision, because they were inhuman. AI targeting systems, unburdened by fear or hesitation, found weaknesses and exploited them with machine efficiency. Every shot counted. Every missile hit. Every maneuver was calculated for maximum damage. Yunwu's fighter squadron engaged the Krethak carriers, darting through defensive fire that should have been impossible to survive. His AI co-pilot made 1,000 micro-corrections every second, keeping him alive through probability and mathematics. He fired his missiles not where the enemy ships were, but where they would be, accounting for thrust vectors and reaction times. A Krethak battleship exploded to his left, its reactor breaching in a miniature sun. Another broke apart above him, its hull crushed by kinetic impacts traveling at relativistic speeds. The space around Earth became a graveyard of metal and fire, but humans were dying too. A destroyer took a direct hit from a plasma lance and vaporized. A frigate's shields failed and it was torn apart by concentrated fire. Taemon's retrofitted cargo hauler lost its engines and began to drift, its crew abandoning ship in escape pods. On the Indomitable's bridge, Jiwan coordinated the defense with absolute focus. She moved ships like pieces on a chessboard, using Earth's gravity well for slingshot maneuvers, hiding behind Mars for momentary cover, using the asteroid belt as terrain. Concentrate fire on the command ship, she ordered. Take out their coordination and the fleet becomes a mob. The human fleet focused their weapons on a single target, the massive Krethak flagship that controlled the entire armada. Nuclear-tipped missiles, kinetic kill vehicles, and laser batteries all converged on one point. The flagship's shields held for 10 seconds, then 15, then 20, then they failed. The flagship broke apart, its command crew dying before they could issue evacuation orders. The Krethak fleet faltered, individual captains unsure what to do without central direction. That moment of confusion was all humanity needed. The human ships pressed the advantage, targeting the next highest-ranking vessels, destroying the chain of command one ship at a time, but there were too many. For every Krethak ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. Human vessels began to fall faster. 20 ships became 15. 15 became 10. The defense was crumbling. Sung Ho was on a cruiser called the Relentless when it took critical damage. His last transmission to Jiwan was simple. Remember what we are fighting for. Make it count. The Relentless, its engines failing and its weapons depleted, executed one final maneuver.